This regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, July 7th, 2014 to order. We will begin with an invocation led by Councillor Accursi, followed by the singing of the national anthem, which will be led by Councillor Papp, and I would ask all who are able to rise.
Shall we pray? Lord, we give thanks for the town of Pelham as we meet to deliberate the matters of business on behalf of all people. Direct the members of Pelham Council through the paths of many decisions placed before them. May each council member show strength, wisdom, courage, and honor as they strive for goodwill in all their considerations. Amen.
Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patron of, in all thy sons' command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First item of business is approval of the agenda. We're out of order, unfortunately. Okay, so I'll need a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Accursi. The agenda that was circulated. Are there any changes to the agenda? I would ask that the council consider moving up two of the items. Thank you. 3 items, actually. All of the items dealing with the leisure plan and the community center. So those are items 1323, 1324, and 1325. To move them up so that we would deal with them immediately following the presentation 722. Is there a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor King. And I would call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment is carried. And now to the main motion as amended. Are there any other changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for getting that. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? That is the next item. That is any conflicts of interest. Do any members have any conflicts they need to disclose? Can that be noted that there were no members with conflicts of interest? Thank you. Now we'll move to presentations. We have an award of merit, and the Chief and I, along with Captain Gutenberg, will convene over here.
Mayor, council, senior staff, ladies and gentlemen, I can share a short story with you to move forward on this. During the weekend in June 2014, a family was visiting the town of Pelham, was relaxing with other family members at a pool. On this day, a young child who was an inexperienced swimmer was swimming with the family members in the shallow end of the pool. For a short period of time, the child disappeared from the sight of the family members. Alyssa Rossman, 21-year-old, was at the poolside that day, observed the lifeless form of the child at the bottom of the pool. Alyssa's training immediately kicked in. She called 911. She entered the pool, rescued the child from the bottom of the pool. She placed the child on the deck of the pool and assessed the child's condition. The child was breathless and pulseless. Alyssa began CPR, and within moments the child started to expel water and breathe on his own. The child was put in the recovery position and monitored until emergency services arrived. Pelham Fire arrived, took over the patient care along with EMS. The child was transported to hospital. As a result of Alyssa's actions, the child survived the incident and has made a full recovery.
Thank you. for relaying that incident report. The chief made me aware of this incident and recommended that we invite Alyssa to a council meeting to express, just as we've done, and I hope we'll do it again, the community's appreciation to her on her efforts. So Alyssa, I would ask that you join me here and I can present on behalf of council an award of merit to you. So this says, Alyssa, this says, the Council of the Town of Pelham, in recognition of your outstanding life-saving efforts on June 22nd, commends you for your meritorious service. Well done. Award of Merit, July 7th, 2014.
Fantastic.
I asked Alyssa if she wanted to say anything. She says she doesn't.
Well, I'd like to thank my team, I guess, because I wasn't the only one there that day, so thanks to them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. And your parents are here and your family? Thank you so much. Once again, thank you very much on behalf of council and the community. Thank you. The clerk indicated to me, we may want to tell you that you don't have to stay for the whole meeting, so please feel free to, you're welcome to stay. But, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, have a great evening. Next, we have a presentation from Mr. Mike Watt and Mr. Brady Wood regarding One Foundation and the Niagara Health System. Mr. Watt, thank you so much for joining us.
Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thanks, Mayor.
Hello, how are you, Brady?
So thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. In my real life, I am Executive VP at Walker Industries. I run the environmental business there. We actually are, Pelham's probably one of the few communities in Niagara we don't have a business, but we were developers here. As you remember, the Chestnut Ridge project was ours actually back with Mountain View, so we're somewhat still involved here. I just want to introduce Brady Wood, who's the Director of Communications for the NHS. And Brady's here really to answer any questions with your with related to the Niagara South Hospital. And I do have Christina Manzi behind me, who's running the foundation right now in the absence of a permanent leader. And Christina is also here to answer any questions that council may have on specific issues that I can't answer. These two guys are full-timers. I'm a volunteer, so bear with me a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Watt, for your service.
If I can just give some background, I'm sure everybody's aware, but obviously there's been a recent amalgamation of all the hospital foundations except Niagara Lake in the region. So that happened fairly recently, and it was a very successful process. Some of these processes in Niagara do not go well. This one actually happened to go fairly well in terms of communities working together. So I don't want to go over all of this, but just I think some of the process might be interesting to council. About spring in 2012, there was an amalgamation committee formed, and I want to give credit to Ruth Ann Newsteg of the Niagara Falls Hospital Foundation, who was the principal architect of getting the community, the foundations to work together. It took about 22 months. These things always take time. And through that, and working with a mediator, we did end up with an approval to amalgamate the 6 foundations in November of 2013. And we did announce that publicly. You may remember we got a fair amount of press related to this issue. And we're now called One Foundation for Niagara Health System. Just in terms of the representation on the board and myself as chair, and a fairly broad representation of communities throughout Niagara. There are individuals from all this board is made up of the members of the legacy boards. There was no process to select board members other than an internal process led by the amalgamation committee. All of these people were on legacy foundations. So that's an interim situation until we have such time as we have an AGM, and we can slowly drift these people from legacy foundations off the board and have a better process for selecting members going forward. One of the benefits of amalgamation, I think, is that we are preserving the assets, all the existing donor gifts and endowments. So if somebody, for example, donated money to the Fort Erie site in particular, we have separate accounts and ways of dealing with that so that we're tracking that. It's very important to donors that they recognise if they want to donate to the broader scope of the health system, or they want to donate to a specific program or need at a specific site, they can still do that. Nothing has changed with respect to the donation capabilities. We think there'll be greater engagement both for site-specific needs and regional programs. The way the NHS is set up these days is very focused on centres of excellence. So you find that people will have to travel regardless of their location for specific services. So a lot of the programs are now regional programs, whether they're at Niagara Falls, whether they're at St. Catharines. Those programs are generally regional, and I guess cancer care would be the #1 example of that, which is in St. Catharines. We feel that this greater body will allow us to do a much better job in terms of fundraising, improved efficiency, obviously, with 6 legacy foundations. There were a fair number of staff associated with those, so we do believe that we can find a lot of efficiencies with respect to administration load. And as you all know, these days it's very important from a charitable point of view that you can demonstrate efficiency in terms of fundraising. We now have full support of the NHS and a much better relationship, quite frankly, between the foundation and the actual hospital. That's probably been the #1 issue from my perspective. Oh, I'm just going to use the page up, page down here. So donors, as I said, can continue to support the area in need, whether it's site-specific or a regional program. And we'll continue to host all the events that the Legacy Foundation's held, such as the Big Move Cancer Ride, which is a traditional thing in St. Catharines. It's raised close to $500,000 yearly for the last 5 years, and the Kids Ultimate Challenge. And I think in particular, gifts made to the Legacy Foundations will be honoured and directed to the site where the gift was intended. So one foundation will continue to manage the funds restricted to Niagara Health System sites. And I think this is the most common question we get from donors. We'd also like to acknowledge the support of councils, including this one, in terms of making commitments to fundraising and providing the needs that we have in terms of specific sites. And in 2013, I just want to remind everybody that this municipality pledged $100,000 towards the purchase of a digital mammography unit for the Welland Hospital site. So I'd maybe just like to move to a quick update on that with your indulgence. So the upgrade to the digital mammography unit at the Welland site has many benefits for patients and doctors. The tests are completed in about half the time, which cause less discomfort. There's a lower radiation dose, and I'm not the expert in this, and we have people that can answer these questions better. It improves accuracy for women over 50. There are lower false positive rates and therefore fewer biopsies created. And it enables real-time consultations with specialists, so a big step forward, I think, for treatment. The unit was installed in February 2014, so obviously we have the commitments financially for the unit, so it's really important that anybody that's made a multi-year commitment like the town of Pelham would come through with that, because the foundations have fully funded the unit already and expecting that cash flow from the commitments we've had from various people. Approximately 125 patients are screened out every week, and over 7,000 patients have been screened on the new unit since it was installed. So we really want to thank you on behalf of the foundation and the hospital system for your commitment to this particular piece of equipment. Some of the things that have happened recently, we have hired a new CEO, and you're actually the first group of politicians to hear about it. We will be making a public announcement tomorrow, so the timing is good on this. We've managed to recruit Paul Andruskevich, who is, comes from the Montreal area, originally from Toronto. Extremely successful fundraiser, over 20 years of fundraising experience. Done a lot of stuff on capital campaigns for new sites and programs. and is a good specialist in plan giving, development, and foundation governance. So Paul, and we did have local applicants in case there's questions about this, but we judged that recruiting somebody of Paul Ann's caliber to this project is really more than we would have expected. Sometimes it's difficult to bring senior people into Niagara for a bunch of different reasons. The main one being how to find a meaningful job for the spouse. As you know, it's been a difficulty with respect to many, many organizations, but Paul Ann's made the commitment to move to Niagara shortly. She's already purchased a house, and her husband's committed to finding a job here or in Burlington. So we're very happy to announce that she will be the new leader of the foundation. I think moving ahead, supporting what we think is close to the $10 million a year capital needs of the Niagara Health System. I think everybody at this table understands that equipment, the major pieces of equipment in hospitals, save and except for some key pieces of cancer care equipment, are all funded by donations. There is no budget at the NHS for equipment other than consumables. So when they need something, they have to come to the foundation to raise that money. I think people misunderstand this in a fundamental way, and I think one of our challenges moving forward is to get that message out to the community about how important this is. Right now, the foundations are raising about $5 million a year collectively, so we obviously need to step up our game in terms of some of our newer facilities and making sure we have the best of what's available and provide the best care we can to Niagara. And I think the biggest challenge for us moving down the road will be launching a capital campaign to fund, ultimately we hope, the new South Niagara Healthcare Facility, and that will be a major challenge. And we retain Paul Ann principally because of her experience in major capital campaigns. So as I said, we rely on our hospitals and our hospitals rely on us, and we've got a very good track record in Niagara of raising money for the health system, and we really need to work together and in terms of our goals and keep Niagara a connected community in terms of healthcare. And Brady, I don't know if you've got anything to add, or we may have some questions from council that Brady may be able to provide better
I think
answers
only
to.
just our extreme gratitude to all the folks who make this possible. Our challenge with capital equipment is no different than any other hospital in Ontario, so that's not a unique situation to Niagara, but we literally couldn't provide care without the generosity of folks like you folks and the various donors in the community, so we are very grateful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watt. Mr. Wood, appreciate that. Do members of council have any questions for our presenters? We certainly appreciate the update. Councillor Papp?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I guess the question is maybe somewhat obvious, but you will not, I will understand, undertake a capital campaign for Niagara South until the feasibility study is complete. Is that correct?
I think we'd be undertaking planning for the capital
Right.
campaign, but I think we need some indication from the province that the
Right.
project is a go in some fashion before we get moving with it.
So the $10 million annually is what you currently need in the current sites, including the new site as it stands?
Yes.
Correct? Is that right? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Other members? I have a question. As you know, we are proceeding with, working together with some doctors to put together a health center. And this council's on record saying, talking about the new UCC, one of the two UCCs that are part of that new South Hospital. So I'm hoping, Mr. Wood, that you might be able to give us a status update on the planning grant and how we can be part of that process.
Sure. So as you folks know, in January, we received $26.2 million from the ministry to plan the South Niagara Hospital. So obviously a big vote of confidence in the plan that's on the table, and expecting when you receive that level of money that the plan's going forward. In fact, that is the language that the ministry used at the announcement. So I think the next few months are important. We're in the middle of an RFP for the group that will help us with the actual planning of the functional plan, master program for the new site. We expect that work would, I'm guessing, start in October and take approximately 18 months. And over the course of that time frame, at the end of that time frame is when we would hope to receive concrete government approval. But as you can imagine, it's the Gantt chart is it looks like a piece of modern art. There are lots of steps along the way and various points of approval that are interjected there. So That's sort of the overarching time frame. I don't have clarity on where in that process exactly we would look for things like the finalization of the locations of the UCCs, but I think we'll obviously, the process will need to involve the communities, and it'll be a process, an analytic process to determine, based on a number of factors, where the best location is and what other things need to be included in the new site as well.
Well, thank you very much for that update and the clarity on that grant, and we look forward to working together with you on that as well. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening, for bringing us an update on the One Foundation, also on our gift to the foundation, and also talking about that planning grant. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. So we do have a motion to receive. No, we don't. Oh, it's a presentation, so we don't need a motion to receive. So thank you very much again for your presentation. Thank you. Next, we move to delegations, and we have some staff that are with us who are going to be presenting some information about the new resident package initiative. So Rose Azutini, Julie Cook, and Craig Genesee are here. Thank you very much for joining us. You're going to be blocking that video. Why don't you block it over there? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you very much. Several months ago, myself, Julie, Rose, and Martha, who could not be here this evening, were challenged with the task of putting together a new resident package for residents moving to the Pelham area for the first time. And we believe we've come up with something that's going to work extremely well. It was important that whatever we came up with was very easy to manage and was very easy to keep current. So we've looked at updating the package semi-annually, and as we go along, we'll show you exactly what triggers that update. So what we were challenged with was basically a new resident package for the town of Pelham, for new residents, providing them with information and access to services and programs available in and through the town of Pelham. And this was done because currently we don't have anything for new residents. So it was important that it was developed that we did have something that we could welcome new residents to Pelham with. Keep going. Yeah. So one of the things that's included in the package, which some of you may be able to see and others, is the community guide. And the community guide is actually going to be the item that triggers the update to the package on a semi-annual basis. So whenever the community guide comes out, the package will be looked at that time, and any improvements or updates we can do to the package we'll do at that time. And obviously the new community guide will go in the package as well. Some of the other items that are going to go in the package are the recycling information will go in the package. There will be a map as well that will go for the Pelham area. There will be a welcome letter that comes directly from the mayor to all the new residents. There'll be a writing pad, and it will be professionally made so that the town of Pelham logo is on there as well. We're also going to have a town of Pelham pen that's going to go in the package. Fridge magnet will also go in there. And something very important is 10 frequently asked questions that residents may want to ask themselves when they come to the area. And Julie, if maybe you could just name off a couple of those, some of those questions that a new resident might know.
I don't have it in front of me, but it'll be things like where can I pick up my recycling bins? How do I find out about community programs? What facilities are available to me in Pelham? That sort of thing. Basic questions like that are very important for new people when they move into the area.
And of course, we're not only going to have the questions, but we'll have the answers on there as well.
Yes.
Pretty important, I suppose. So as well, what also was important was how we're going to get this to the new residents. And there's actually two different ways of that's going to be available. One is if a new resident would just come to town hall themselves and come in and say, I'm a new resident, can you tell me where to get my recycle bins? Or that will trigger our dear person Rose to actually, she will have these packages right at her desk, and she'll be able to hand them directly to the new resident, welcome them personally, and help them with any questions they may have as well. The second way is through our website. There will be a nice big red button that's interactive on our website. It'll be labeled New Resident Package, for new residences. And they'll be able to press that button. It'll probably look something like Rudolph's red nose or something like that. And they'll be able to press it, and it'll take them to a link where they'll be able to put in their address, and Rose will get the email, and then I will personally be dropping off the package to them. If they're not home, we can just put it right on their doorknob. It'll be a nice little welcome gift for them when they move in at that point, or if they're already in.
That's really,
Yep, that's about it. Short and sweet. We know it's a full agenda tonight, so we don't want to take up too much time.
Thank you
Are there
very
any
much.
questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your work.
You're welcome.
Notice that you used the creative problem-solving process
Yes, we did. Yes, we
to
did.
to put this together, so thank you for that. Do members of council have any questions for our staff?
It's just,
Councillor
through you,
Pat?
Mr. Mayor, it's more obvious, new resident being new resident, right? Not a new business.
Correct. There's another committee dealing with new
I
businesses.
understand that,
Yeah.
but I mean, if someone came in who obviously starting a new business and is a new resident, they would get both.
Yes,
I would
they
presume,
would.
right?
Yes,
How
they
to start
would.
the business plus this information package as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
very good.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor King.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not so much a question as a comment, two comments. One, thank you for your presentation and for putting this together. And just as a suggestion, is there a possibility to coordinate this with local realtors?
We have heard that they do something as well with some kind of new resident package. So yes, we are looking at possibly coordinating with them. And of course, there are people that move here without using a realtor. So we would obviously hit those people for sure. But anybody that does use a realtor, yes, we have heard that they do something as well. And yeah, it definitely sounds like we should be working with them as well on this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just in terms of the timing, so when are you planning to start?
We're just about ready to go, except for the notebook, which we would need the new logo, just some of the swag stuff. We're ready to go. Everything's available, and
we have
I would
everything.
imagine 30 days we're going to be up and running. Yeah.
Councillor Papp's question was, is it budgeted? And I'm going to ask the CEO to answer that, and then also maybe he'll want to make a comment or two. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The budget is basically in place because there are items that we already have, the publications we already do. A letter from you, for example, is not a cost of any sort. So that will be put together by existing materials. As we move forward with other things we may want to include, or as this program evolves, we could certainly include that as part of our operating budget. Just by way of comment, this has been an item that has been in council's strategic plan since, well, for 4 years almost. And I'm pleased that the staff has taken the project on. As you're aware, this is part of our performance management program. What we did this year as part of that program is to set up a variety of interdepartmental teams that tackle projects directly related to the strategic plan. So after 4 years, I'm very pleased that we were able to achieve that. We can knock this one off the list, and there'll be many more to come between now and December with various other projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. CAO, and thank you very much for your presentation. Again, just to underscore what the CAO said about interdepartmental teams working together. So different departments, each of you, but coming together for a common purpose, and we look forward to receiving, Mr. CAO, other presentations about how staff have solved some of the challenges that we've given in the strategic plan. Thank you very much for this. We look forward to its implementation, and thanks for your hard work. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Kirsty, seconded by Councillor Lane, that the new resident package information as presented by the Town of Pelham interdepartmental team comprised of Rose Azzottini, I'm sorry, Rose, I just call her Rosie, Julie Cook, Craig Genesee, and Martha Tosher be received, and that the recommendations contained therein be approved for implementation. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation and work. Thank you. Next, we have another delegation. It is John Stevenson and Norma Draper and James Flanagan. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Stevenson. Good to see you again.
Good to be here. We should get a fridge magnet, I guess, for visiting, perhaps. What we'd like to do tonight is do a presentation of an overview of our assessment of the condition and lifespan and implications associated with the existing arena. And this is the next step in the discussions and planning and considerations of what's involved with ultimately developing and operating a new community center and arena for the town. So on your behalf, on council's behalf, Leisure Plan commissioned AECOM engineers to do an engineering assessment of the existing facility with a focus on identifying its state and the costs that may be associated with its continued operation for certain periods of time. And as Jim Flanagan, who's the engineer who coordinated the work, will speak to, from our concern, we have that immediate first 5-year period from now on, which is of immediate concern, because if we are actually considering the development of a new facility, that would be the period during which the new facility is developed, and we would hope to be able to maintain existing service. So I'm going to ask Jim to make a presentation of highlights of their findings and their conclusions. When Jim's finished, I'll just speak for a few moments, and then we'll answer any questions as detailed as you wish. Okay?
Thank
Jim?
you. Thank you so much.
Mayor, members of council. So we have prepared a full report. These slides just are a summary, some of the highlights of the things we found as when we were looking at the arena. So our AECOM's scope of work was the architectural, mechanical, and electrical systems on the building. Another consultant directly hired by the town had completed a structural assessment a year or so ago, and a number of upgrades have already been completed on that front. In terms of the architectural systems, so the roof and the exterior walls are in, I would say, poor condition. The upper roof on the left-hand side has already been coated with a roofing repair type of product, and joints sealed along the top. Not an uncommon way of trying to extend the life of a steel roof, but it's indicating that it's past its prime definitely and is needing full replacement in the future. Exterior walls are just plain concrete block. They're not insulated. There's no weather protection other than the block itself. And it's certainly showing its age. A number of joints that allow water to get in the wall, which just continues the deterioration process. A couple of fire separation and exiting issues. Is there a laser pointer in one of these items? Does anybody know?
I got one here.
So Durley Ever Prepared has one.
It comes to being a Jedi.
Got one here. Promise not to hit you. So this is the main entrance vestibule and the stairway that heads up to the second floor. So the utility room that's underneath that stair actually extends right underneath the stair, which is not actually allowed by code anymore. So it needs a fire separation between the stair and the room. It's not a terribly expensive thing to fix, but it really should be fixed.
Right.
The exit stair itself that just exits directly into the vestibule, which is not fire separated from the rest of the arena, should be addressed. And then, not shown in this picture, but the other stair that goes also from the upstairs exits straight down into the arena, as opposed to going directly outside. So should there be a fire in the arena and you're coming down that stair, you're putting someone in jeopardy. So from a fire separation point of view, those are items that should be addressed. Other architectural items, more on the finishing side, flooring is in fair to poor condition in a number of cases in the concession area. It is showing its age and is getting difficult to clean. In the change room facilities, the tile flooring is also in poorer condition, and the washroom facilities that are right there are not separated from a privacy point of view. which would be the standard way to do things now. Barrier-free accessibility, although it was not a requirement, of course, when the arena was built, is becoming more and more important. There's no law that says you have to retroactively upgrade it yet, but the AODA Act is certainly encouraging provision of barrier-free facilities. So the public washrooms that we have now certainly are too narrow. The doors are too narrow. There's not enough room to maneuver a wheelchair in and around, and even the cubicle that is intended for barrier-free use is not really wide enough, or doesn't have the grab bars to make it practically barrier-free. From a mechanical point of view, a couple of the exhaust fans that are quite old, needing replacement, and are also positioned too close to the edge of the roof. There's a requirement that, from a maintenance point of view and safety, that you can't have a piece of equipment like that within 6 feet of the edge of a roof, just in case the person maintaining it might slip and fall off. So those are our mechanical issues. Inside the rink itself, the infrared heaters are nearing the end of their lifespan. The heat shields are getting quite damaged. And the arena ventilation, now this photo doesn't show very much, but that is the exhaust fan at the end of the rink, which is just a manually controlled exhaust fan. There's no gas detection in the rink for carbon monoxide, which should be present. The refrigeration plant is actually in pretty good condition. It's being well maintained. It's just of a style with the R11 refrigerant that is being phased out as a CFC producing material. And in the kitchen, the exhaust hood is it's constructed of the incorrect material. The NFPA current requirements are that would be a stainless steel product as opposed to galvanized steel that it is now. The electrical system in the building is just, most systems are approaching the end of their useful life. They're not failing yet, but we would expect over the next number of years that you would start to see them failing. And more the arrangement of the panels. In this case, the electrical code would require a meter of clear space to be kept in front of all of those panels. So having the room laid out the way it is with all the equipment and other furniture in there is really not appropriate. And the lighting in the arena itself has been upgraded, so that's in good condition. The lighting in the rest of the facility is quite old and not energy efficient anymore. The fire alarm system, we would suggest that it should be upgraded to a 2-zone system. It's just a single zone right now, so at least the second floor viewing area would have its own zone. And emergency lighting is present, so that would be one of the emergency lights there, but in a number of places there's not enough of them, and they're blocked by structure. So if you're ever in a case where the power was out, you needed emergency lights, we don't think very many areas would actually be properly lit. So we summarized as John mentioned, the costs into the 4 different categories. What we felt were immediate needs, 2 to 5 years, 6 to 10, and then 10 plus. And these estimates were with the premise that you would be keeping the facility operating as an arena going forward, not for a shorter period of time, which I understand may be the case. So this, you can see the bulk of the costs that land in the from now till 5 years out time frame is a little bit over $2 million of estimated cost of items to be repaired, which in our opinion would be much better spent on the new facility that you're planning, as I understand. Talking about
So when you look at, I guess the conclusion of the engineering report is that the facility, in a kind of an objective sense, should be replaced within that 5-year period of time. What we wanted to do as part of this investigation was also look at, are there any alternative uses that this structure could be put to, removing the arena function. And when you go through the list of issues associated with the roof, which is like $500,000, the cladding, the interior arrangement of the facilities, the interior facilities, and what it would take to kind of bring that up to something that would make it a usable indoor facility, I don't see that there's any merit or any value to the municipality of making that form of investment in that facility. At best, you may, if there was a private sector organization that was looking for a clear span type of facility, you could maybe look at entering into some agreement or partnership where they undertook the costs associated with repairing and maintaining the facility as part of the use. Although the magnitude of those costs are fairly significant, so whether it would be practical for a private sector organization to come in and invest that, as opposed to just building a new purpose-built facility, I don't think it's really feasible. Having said that, the concrete pad in the facility is in decent shape. And of all the things, if we were to demolish the facility, there may be some merit in saving the concrete pad, because it could form the base for some other types of outdoor facility development, such as a skateboard park, basketball courts, multi-purpose pads, ball hockey things. So there could be repurposing that pad. There is a proviso, though, with that potential, is that we don't know for certain the elevation of the pad relative to the ground and the property surrounding. So that would have to be checked and confirmed before proceeding to explore any possible use. But otherwise, we would have like a deep splash pad, natural splash pad. But from our perspective, and with Jim's input, sorry, you can demolish the facility and protect the pad. Okay, so that's a possibility. So our recommendation would be that, our conclusion is that, the alternative uses, there's nothing really practical or wise for the municipality to explore except for perhaps saving the pad. If you wanted to build a field house or something like that to serve that park, it would be much better, more efficient, more effective investment of funds to build something new from scratch. So that's the conclusion of the investigation of the facility. And you see in the report there's detailed spreadsheets that support these things. I guess what, in similar situations, we would say is that you're a bit on borrowed time during that 5-year window. And Jim and I have gone back and forth, but it's basically the process would be there's some life safety issues that should be addressed as an obligation of the municipality. But most of the other things, perhaps the approach should be patch as patch can and hope it works during that interim period, assuming that you are going to replace the facility. If you weren't going to replace the facility, then it's a major rebuild. Okay. So questions for Jim or myself?
Thank you very much for the presentation, for your work. I'm just going to, before council asks questions, I'm just going to nuance this because it is in the report. Can you just remind us of the costs if we were to keep it open for that 2 to 5 year period, but do something else somewhere else? I think the report says it's, yeah.
Yeah, we had estimated that you should budget about $200,000.
Okay, and that's for those
And that's,
life.
yeah, a few life safety items and what we expect would be some failure of mechanical and electrical systems in that time.
Okay.
And a bit of roof patching.
A little bit of continual roof patching, yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, questions to our presenters? Councillor Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. My question would be, if we were to undertake and spend this $2.5 or whatever $1 million, what then would become the life expectancy of this facility?
I would say less than, well, I'm going to say less than 15 years, but it's not that the facility would be out of service entirely. It would be that you'd continue to spend the money. So in another 5 years, you'd re-project these costs out. So for example, the refrigeration plant that we estimate has about 10 to 15 years life left in it. The replacement of that is not in these numbers. So 10 years from now, it's gonna be maybe 5 years left. Then it becomes maybe $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 to replace that. But that's not in these numbers yet. This is just projecting over the 10 years.
I don't really think my question got answered. If we were to spend $2.5 million, when would we spend more money? In 10 years, when we have to spend another $500,000 on?
So if you spent that money for the next 5-year period, say, at the end of the 5-year period, all these numbers would have to be updated again because some of the systems would be failing and there'd be another cycle of cost. So investing the $2 million is buying you like 5 to 10 years, but mainly 5 years, continuation of the service. The proviso is the structure is still a very old structure that's at the end of its lifespan, right? So at some point, the cumulative add-on factors just get to a point where each year you're just going to be replacing. So we're trying to project out, you know, as wisely as we can, I guess, to be proactive. And if you compare the costs that we're talking here to the new facility, remember in the new facility we have all the costs associated with the property development, furnishing and all that stuff. So you would want to compare that $2 million to the very first line item associated with the arena, not all the additional costs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, there is a question of functionality of the building as it sits right now, not only condition. If we were to throw all this money into this building, we still have a non-functional building, in your opinion, right? So
Exactly. Yes, you don't gain anything in that. It's purely improving the condition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others with questions? Councillor Ribbiak.
Just to add some clarity to the mayor's question with regard to the cost over the next couple of years, as I take it, $200,000 over the next couple of years, and then $300,000 to demolish the building, right? I mean, that would also have to be considered as part of that. Okay, just to make sure I had it right.
So the issues that, I mean, if you were not in a position where you were considering possible replacement, you would be saying, these are things to maintain the operation of the facility as we have now. It's not making massive improvements to the user or the public environments. It's maintaining that facility in operation and addressing issues of liability for the municipality. So it's still that old building. It's just continuing to chunk along. At some point, we have to make a strategic decision about the best time to make investment in facilities. And so we're at this point where if we begin planning for a new facility now, it's going to take 4 years before it's operational. We want to maintain the provision of that municipal service to the users. What's the cost going to be to maintain that facility in, you know, the basic operational point so that we don't lose the service? This isn't about making it a better facility.
Thank you. Others? Any questions? Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I have a couple of questions. What costs would you allocate, or what would you guesstimate would be needed to make it a functional facility? You know, I understand the change rooms are small, et cetera, et cetera. Any direction on that?
That's a very difficult question. It depends entirely on what function you as town council would want it to provide.
Okay.
So you're probably, my guess is you'd be into building an addition on the front, because I don't think you'll have enough square footage in the footprint that's there to make it properly barrier-free and functional.
You basically have to replace most of the user environments, right? So that's all the washrooms and change rooms and the lobby space, and the upstairs hall is going to be a redo completely. The issue that typically comes up is renovation and remodeling an existing facility is actually more expensive than building new. because you're having to deal with all the constraints. So we have to rip out everything that you've got, and so we didn't do a detailed projection of that because from my perspective, it was my decision that it seemed to be not a wise investment of money into a facility that really should be replaced regardless. If you just wanted to have a single lifespan, it really would be the wisest and most prudent investment, strategic investment of municipal funds is to replace this facility, not to keep spending money on it.
As a follow-up, Mr. Mayor, if I may, where my thought process was going on this is we've heard from several of your reports that it would be difficult to justify a twin pad at the current time, and that your projection was that we could be out to 2025 by the time we needed a second pad. So I guess my first question was predicated on the thought of trying to keep this facility going as a backup practice facility, secondary pad, while we undertook to build a new facility with a single pad, with the thought in mind that when we reach that critical threshold, then we could go ahead and build that. I mean, can you comment on that?
So that's an approach, a strategy to say that let's invest in this facility we have until there's the demand for the two pads. The disadvantages of that are going to be into two operations. So the operating cost each year will be significantly more than it is now. Most of the use would go to the new facility, so it's going to be hard to market and sell any unused time at the old facility. But we do have to have staff there to operate it. What might be something, if you wanted to kind of do that, is think of a practice pad. Well, you could take the structure down, keep the ice pad and the ice plant, and have an artificial outdoor skating rink. They're expensive to operate. The season's quite short. But that could be an option to buy some time if you wanted to meet the demands. There's some that have been built in Toronto now where they have a space frame over the rink to cut the sun loading down, because it's basically the sun hitting the ice that causes a problem. That could be an option that you look at. But I guess the issue was always, we have limited amount of money to spend. Where's the best place to spend it? And I guess in the first instance, since we had demand for one for sure, it was to build a new facility as a replacement for that facility, rather than spending anything more than we really had to on that facility. It was sort of like time to fish and cut bait, as it was.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Others? Just in terms of the alternative uses, if we can just nuance that out, the comment about clear space.
Well, so it's the arena's clear span structure. We don't have any known demands for municipal service provision to do that, but if you strip the roof off and put a new roof on it and reclad it and ripped out all the interior spaces, these types of facilities have been used for indoor soccer types of uses. But it's usually a private sector proponent that comes in. When I looked at those options, and I thought about what was involved in modifying the existing facility to allow for some use in that, it would probably not be a great idea for the private sector in terms of financial deal, because you could build brand new facility with everything completely as it would support their operation of an indoor soccer facility for less than it would cost to modify this one to support it. But perhaps there's somebody who's interested in doing that, and you could explore it. We're not aware of demand for that type of thing, but it would be that nature of space use. We don't want to get into any types of uses that would compete with the proposed facility. So I don't want rental of a pad when the ice is out, because we're going to have a new facility and we're going to have to market and rent that municipal facility. So I don't want to bring a private sector in to compete with our new facility too. So it would have to be something purpose-built that was looking at a clear span facility. And really, the only thing that's out there is the indoor soccer kind of type of facilities.
Okay, thank you. And maybe just, Councillor Lane was asking some questions, and I think, you know, we've heard for a number of years, and some of this was a number of years ago, about the concept, the idea of retrofitting, adding on, that kind of thing. And saying, you know, could the pad and the actual box building around it, and you'd have to rip everything off. So can we just hear a little bit more about that as a possibility?
For a twin pad facility, that's the wrong location. You get surrounding abutting residential units, and if we increase the volume of use of that facility, we need more parking space, and the traffic would increase, and I'm sure everybody would complain. It's probably would be a poor location. It would be the only location for an ultimate twin pad facility. So that's just from a general site suitability perspective. So you're basically limited, I think, by the nature of that site to, you can knock it down and build exactly, you know, a new single pad there, facility, but you'd be very restricted in terms of any potential for adding non-ice related facilities, like the community center component. I don't think you had the land area to support it. So, you know, modifying it, remodeling, adding on to it, you're also adding, theoretically, notwithstanding the fact that we don't have the land area and I think the compatibility of uses, it shouldn't function as a major kind of park, you know, use for that facility. But the other issue is, you've got to tear out so much of this existing facility. So basically what you're going to save is the structural arrangement. But, you know, like the exterior walls, most of the interior goes, right? So you're still kind of fighting the fact that it's going to be that size, that shape, and you're building on 35-year-old plus bones. If we're gonna, so from my mind, I'd rather start fresh. So I wouldn't want to remodel that one. I'd rather demolish it and build new on that site if that was the only option.
Thank you, that's helpful. Thank you. Any other questions for our presenters? And we may call on you. Thank you very much for your report and for your work. Any final comments?
Well, the final comment is, we've gone through this in a similar situation a couple of times. Things fail as they get older, so there's unanticipated costs that we could incur. But it's sort of like, I think we as non-engineers always want, just give me the lifespan, you know, tell me specifically what the lifespan is. And I think the engineer's approach is, lifespan is all dependent on how much you're willing to spend and how long you're willing to put up with that condition. So when you looked at the numbers, this was really me trying to force the engineering discipline to say, you know, we have to make a strategic decision. At what point do we call it quits? But, you know, if it's 3 years or 5 years or 6 years, you know, it's sooner or later that decision has to be made, I think. The roof is $500,000. I certainly would think that it would be better to spend $100 million on something new than this old facility. So you can play the numbers out, right? You can stretch it out years and that, or you can kind of ignore it. But ultimately, because of the age and condition of the building, the issues will become greater, I think, as each year goes by. Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your final comments. I do have a motion to receive, and it's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. that the Leisure Plan Phase 3 presentation be received for information. Any further discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you again. And I would actually ask if perhaps you can provide a copy of that PowerPoint to the clerk so it can be included with the minutes. Council will recall that we moved forward some items here. And they were 1323, 1324, and 1325. And I think the CAO will comment on this. So it's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The council received the issue sheet regarding site selection for a potential community center, and the council approved the location of a potential community center at the intersection of Street C and Street B, located on the town-owned land. Mr. CAO, maybe you can just comment on this and nuance the location for us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I certainly can. The recommendation from administration is that based on the phases 1, 2, and 3 reports as provided by Leisure Plan, that council locate a potential facility in the East Swan Hill development area. I think council's heard fairly compelling evidence that the existing site, even if you were to build a new facility, is not appropriate, and that we would like for a planning moving ahead purpose to have some confirmation that if a if a community center was being built, that the planning that is required to go around that would be focused in the East Fawn Hill area. On the screen, you will note the map of the draft plan of subdivision. Street C and Street B are basically the two streets that intersect. The 32 acres of town land is on the right-hand side, and we would be looking just to the right of where that cursor is. Can you look at that? No, up right in that area there. That is right now the area that's been identified as a potential site. However, as you move down towards Highway 20 and Block 2, is it 2 or 3? Block 3, sorry. There may be some potential in there. We haven't fully investigated it, but the thinking is now that it would go on the other side of Street C.
Okay, thank you very much. And now to council. Discussion? Any discussion? Councillor Kersey, Councillor Papp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I support the general intent of the motion. I'm a little bit concerned about locking it in specifically at the intersection of sites or streets C and B, only because the committee that we're in the process of striking, the Architectural Review Committee, we've not heard from the architect as to the size requirements and the components that are going to be incorporated. So I would hate to handcuff both of those parts of the puzzle, if you will, by having such a specific motion. So I'm thinking that to support the location in East Fawn Hill on the town-owned lands is a reasonable approach, but to lock it in at the juncture of B and C is a little bit disconcerting to me.
Okay. Are you looking for a response from staff on that, or?
That's a good start.
Okay, thank you. Mr. CO?
Thank you, Mr.
Why are
Mayor.
you recommending the intersection?
I certainly agree with the councillor's comments. We don't want to be locked in at this point. When the recommendation was drafted, the thinking at the time was that Street C and Street B on the town land could be on either side of Street C, anywhere on the town-owned land. So it's similar to a case where you have what you think is a great location. You start doing the planning work and you realize that it may not be the best spot. There might be somewhere else. So I believe that is vague enough to allow us to move things around if we required. But I think the intent is that it would somewhere go on the town-owned land on one side or the other of Street C, and that this recommendation leaves that open to happen.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Well, again, it's specifying at the intersection, so that precludes, for example, having it on Rice Road, facing Rice Road, or having it lower in the town-owned lands to the south. So that's why I was hoping that we maybe could have a more general motion or recommendation that it be at least placed on town-owned lands.
Okay, and probably in the East Font Hill area, is that what?
That's right, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so, so perhaps an amendment that council approve the location of potential, what you're recommending is amendment, community center located on town-owned lands in the East Font Hill area.
That'd be a great
Okay.
idea.
That'd be a lot
Okay.
easier.
Happy
Is there a
with that.
seconder for that? So Councillor Papp?
So this will decide it.
So the amendment is to remove the words "at the intersection of Street C and Street B" and add in the East Font Hill area. And Councillor Papp has seconded that. To that amendment, Councillor Lane?
Yes, if I might, Mr. Mayor, ask a question, and that question would be, this is a site selection for a potential community center. Are we assuming that this community center is also the arena complex, or is this, because I have a problem with it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the community center is all of the components that have been identified in the Leisure Plan Phase 1, 2, and 3 report, which includes, among other things, double gymnasium, at this point, a single pad with the ability to extend to a twin pad, fitness center, indoor track, meeting space, multipurpose room, art space, et cetera, et cetera.
Councillor?
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering if we're putting the cart before the horse, because we haven't decided totally on what's going on with the arena, as far as where it may go. Maybe it's going to be arena standalone. Maybe it would go where it is. We haven't made those decisions, as I understand it. So I have a question, problem with this at this stage.
Okay. Mr. CAO, so the councillor is indicating that maybe not in the motion, it's not understood exactly all of the components that staff are recommending. How do we nuance that out? So when you say community center, it's the multi-purpose community center that council is looking at designing.
That's correct,
Is that
Mr. Mayor.
correct?
Yeah, yes.
So Councillor, I think what's being recommended is that it's all of those components that Leisure Plan, Mr. Stevenson and company have suggested to us, with the proposal in the way that it's done in terms of the phasing, and to put the arena component and the community center component together. And we received information about that and why it was less expensive and made more sense, et cetera. So I think that's what staff are recommending here, and it's incumbent in the resolution.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Councillor Papp, I had you're seconding the amendment. Did you want to speak any further?
No, I'm very comfortable that we explore that particular community center and its, I would say, integrated physical components and assets in the town's lands. And notwithstanding, I understand where Councillor Lane is coming from, and when we always can make decisions to change and alter that, but from what we've been working towards is towards that kind of entity, and that's what we should be focusing on at this stage. And subject to what happens with the new design committee, what they come back with, and make that determination. So I'm comfortable with that as all. I agree with Councillor Kersey that I hope my colleagues that generalizing it gives us options.
Okay.
On location.
Thank you. So to the amendment, are there further speakers?
No, it's good.
Okay. So are we ready to call the question on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? So the amendment carries. Now to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion or debate about that? I would like to say a few things. I think going into this process, and it's been a long process, and there's still a long process to come, hopefully not as long. There were a certain number of questions from the community. Questions like, is the demand there? What does the community want? What are the operating costs? Where should it go? All those things have been answered with the help with Leisure Plan, working together with this council and staff. We know that that the demand is there for this type of facility. We know that there is not the demand for a twin pad at this time, but we do know that there is demand for other facility components, other community center components, like the walking track, like the fitness components, like the double gymnasium and the other ancillary portions, rooms and things that can be used for multi-purpose. We also know that the costs to operate, which was presented to us last time, and that those costs are actually allowable in the envelope, I'll say, that we're currently spending on an existing arena that's only that purpose arena. So the cost to operate the community center and the arena are within the confines of what we're currently spending. We don't know the capital costs because we haven't designed it yet. Our treasurer at a previous meeting has given us some estimates, some worst-case scenario estimates, and this council has said we wanted to formulate a design committee so that we can try to go to potential funders, i.e. the federal and provincial government, and also to the community with a design and with numbers on capital. So we don't have that number yet. The other thing that I think is different is that the East Fawn Hill Secondary Plan has been adopted. That it passed through all those hurdles, and passed through is the right word, through the planning approvals with this council in the region and then the Ontario Municipal Board. So if this was a different year, it wouldn't have been possible. But now that all of the development that's coming forward in that East Fawn Hill area, the medical center, the retirement home, Wellspring, the commercial components are actually real and happening, it makes sense to now look very, very seriously at this location. It's for these reasons that I am in support of this. There is still work to do in terms of designing and costing out what those capital costs are, and working very, very diligently to try to reduce those capital costs for our taxpayer, and to partner with upper levels of government and to partner with funders. But I think it's important for us to continue to move forward in this. Does this mean tonight that something will be built? As Councillor Papp just indicated, there are other decision points along the way. But it means that we're moving, if we were to sustain or to get those costs and sustain those dollars, and it made sense, then we could proceed. So it's another indication to assist with the design, and ultimately, as I think it's in one of these reports, so that we are shovel-ready in case those funding requirements come forward. Thank you very much, Council, for allowing me to say those pieces and try to bring all of this together for the community. I will now call the question on the amended motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended unanimously. The next item has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King. The council received the issue sheet regarding the selection of an architect for the design of a community center, and the council directs staff to request a fee proposal from each of the 4 firms that have been pre-qualified for the design of a new community center, and that once the fee proposals are received, they be reviewed by the Architectural Design Advisory Committee, who will make final recommendation to council for approval. Any discussion regarding this piece? Councillor Papp?
Again, I know it sounds obvious, but I guess I need to and past experience in, is to me, when we go and ask these firms to bid, they usually ask you, what are you putting into this building? So if we're clear on that, and I look at the CEO, and we know exactly, generally, I should say speaking, what you want, components you want in there, size of arena, size of all this stuff, that's how they'll bid on this. And then what I understand is, so I'm clear, is that the Community Center Advisory Committee would examine the components and functionality of that particular entity, not necessarily commenting on fees, because fees, quite frankly, are pretty structured in the size of projects in my past experience. And I think, I just want to be sure it's like the raison d'etre. You're asking me to bid on a project, so what am I bidding on? What exactly am I going to get, am I going to be bidding on? Is that, if that's clear enough, I don't have any problem with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer the councilor's questions, yes, that work has already been done by the architects. We provided them with the facility components as part of the pre-qualification process, so they're aware of all of the elements as recommended again by Leisure Plan, and that is how we were able to shortlist to 4.
Right.
At this point, what we're asking is that the 4 pre-selected or pre-qualified firms provide the fee proposal that they would require in order to complete the design up to construction-ready documents. Because we have asked the committee to become part of this process, which is another recommendation tonight, we thought it would be a good way to start the committee's work by having the architects come in and make a presentation and get some input from the members of the committee that can help with the recommendation to council about what firm we believe council should ultimately retain.
Right. And in terms of the scoring of that, I think Councillor Papp asked about, it's not only the fee, but there are other criteria. Can you just speak to that, please?
Yes, you'll see in the background of the report, there is the scoring allocations, so that has been made known already, and that is how the process would be scored.
So the fee is 50%, design 10, partners 20, and demonstrated experience qualifications 20. Councillor?
Yeah, I guess it's in tandem that when this new committee is structured, they would be, forgive my simplicity, but I'm just saying, we're building this house. This is what this house consists of. Here's what we've gone out and asked architects to design for this particular, forgive my simplicity, but, and what we want to do is to bring you up to speed, to say these are the components that we're looking at. And subject to that, of course, the bid, and said to you how much it is, and not only that, but how good they are at the whole engineering, the architectural. And that would allow for also the discussion as to how all of these various components fit in, along with the ultimate financing of whatever the capital costs are of that. I'm comfortable with that. It's just, like, I'm not asking, we're asking a group to assess or be a peer review, if you want to call it, of a particular design. Am I fair to say that?
Well, right now, this is about the architectural piece, and I guess your question is, how does this component interact with the design committee?
Exactly.
Mr. CEO, and maybe you can speak to other experience as well that we have with committees?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the most recent and best example of this is the way that Fire Station 3 came into being. We had the committee of firefighters that were involved, which is akin to this design, this committee. So it's people that use and know the facility, people that are stakeholders in it, that would have input into the layout and design, but we can't get that input until we have selected the architect. So you select the architect, and then once that process is done, this committee then works with the architect to guide through the design process right through to construction documents.
I don't have a problem with that at all, Mr. CEO, because I'm looking at that as a sole function, but I'm saying the multiple functions of this particular are complex. I mean, and they have to be seen in a context of ensuring that whoever's bidding on this, regardless of the architecture, that we're clear on what type of building we're putting on.
correct.
That's all I wanted to get to. Okay, I'm clear.
And it matches.
It matches what we have been
been
presented by the conceptual of leisure plan and the engineering assessment. That's fine. I'm good with that.
Good,
Thank you.
And I'm just going to add, Mr. CEO, I think it's similar to, to the skate park. Not as complex, but a similar process in terms of the committee themselves that designed, that we put in place to design the skate park, actually picked from, in that case, among 2, the architect, and worked together with them and all of that. And as a result, it's an amazing park that actually is an award-winning park. So we look forward to similar things here. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps through to the CAO. Give me some comfort here. I guess my vision of this architectural review committee was a little bit different. My thought was that, well, we have identified with various meetings of groups and what have you, and the leisure plan, the number, the gross components that we wanted within the community center / arena. But that we struck this committee so that they could look at each of the components that were specific to their areas of interest to give us more detailed types of design features that they want, things that were of highest importance, lowest importance, et cetera. And it would seem to me, before we went out to the 4 architectural firms, that it would be helpful to have a delineation of that's been brought to the table by the Architectural Review Committee, so that we've prioritized those elements that are of highest priority down through those that, yeah, we'll take them if we can get them, but, you know, they're not necessarily a make or break. So I guess my question to you is, outline the timing that you envision by engagement of these architects in providing a fee, because I think it'd be very difficult for them to give us a fee without having an understanding and an appreciation of the types of elements that are scaled in terms of priority.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My experience has been that the architectural firms, when they make a fee proposal on a project of this scope, usually do it by percentage of capital cost. So it's not, at this point, until you design the facility, we can't understand what the capital is. So although I appreciate the councilor's question, the fee proposal would be what their percentage of expenses would be based on the total cost of construction, and you won't know that until you do your design. So that's the way that this type of process would work. So I understand what you're saying. There'll be plenty of opportunity for the committee to be involved in what components they must have, would like to have, and would, would be the ultimate luxury. That is all part of the design process, and that's the exact reason why these particular people are involved in the process, is to provide that level of input.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in other words, what we're looking for is a global number for them to undertake the architectural services that we would need going forward. And they would then have to sell us on what their value-added services are and what they would bring to the table in terms of their strengths, et cetera.
Mr. Zio?
That's absolutely correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you. I just want to add a facet to Councillor Kersey's question. The aesthetics of the building, is that handled the same way? That is what's going to look like from the street? We spent an awful lot of time expressing a concern that East Fonthill should look good as well as work. Does that final design, the appearance of it, is it handled the same way, or do they come in with that up front, or tell us a little bit about that?
Mr. CO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To respond to the councillor, absolutely the architect is responsible for the aesthetic design of the building, but as council is aware, we're in the process of having our design guidelines come into place that provides the architectural controls that we require in order to make sure that the building design is beautiful. I think it's a non-negotiable that a civic facility has to make a civic statement, and that will certainly be part of the presentations from the architects to say, this is a civic building, it represents the town, it has to speak to the community, it has to be beautiful. We don't want a square box with corrugated metal with different colors all over it. We want it to look great. So what can you do as a firm to deliver that for us? So that's something that would be a very, very high priority as part of the overall design project.
Thank you. And so that would suggest that they would have some concept sketches, at least very early on, that the deciding committee could be looking at and judging as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, that's correct. That's where the selection rating comes in. When you look at the ranking, you want to see examples of work that they've done of a similar scope or nature to demonstrate that they can deliver what they say they can. And oftentimes, they may come in with a kind of sketch drawing, but they also will show samples of other work that are similar scope, and that will help in the decision-making process.
Just final, does that all fit under the 10 points in the grading, or is it spread out beyond that? 10 points is the design approach, related value-added services. So that would suggest that that's the smallest aspect of it as opposed to, is it 20 as well?
Through Mr. Mayor, the total points in that area that would be assessed would be about 30. So you've got 20 for the demonstrated experience part, which, and the qualifications of the subconsultants, that's important. But also the other 10 for the design approach. So there's quite a bit of weight in the decision process towards that point.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for clarity, this is to follow the design standards that will have the design guidelines.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, good. Others? All right, thank you. Are we ready to call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor King, that council receive the issue sheet regarding the Architectural Design Advisory Committee, which I think is called something else here, Community Center Design Committee. We'll have to figure out their name. Maybe that can be one of the things that they do. And that council consider a bylaw later in this evening's agenda recommending the following appointments to the Architectural Design Advisory Committee. The Mayor's Youth, and each of these have been provided by each of the groups. So the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, Alyssa Girardi. The Pelham Minor Hockey Association, Shane Smith. The Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, Sharon Cook. The Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee, Gail Hillier. The Niagara YMCA, Janet St. Amon, and that's an ex officio position. The Pelham Figure Skating Club, Sean Reeves. Old Timers Hockey, Don Davis. The Pelham Art Club, Mary Powley. The Service Club Rep, Doug Freeland, and he's with the Kinsman. The Performing Arts Community, Jen Benson. And the Pelham Panther Basketball Association, Brian Bilch. How do you say it? Bleich. I got it wrong. Sorry, Brian Bleich. Apologies. And 2 additional community members to be so named during consideration of the appointment bylaw. Any discussion regarding the names and the individuals? Questions? Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the name in the resolution is taken directly from the terms of reference approved by council.
Thank you. Others? Any? Councillor Papp?
You're asking us to approve this? We've still got to approve 2 community members, so we're going to defer?
Madam
Or
Clerk,
I'm asking out of protocol.
So what we're doing is we are accepting the recommendations
These recommendations.
of the various groups. The last line, which you may not have heard because I took error on one of the names, it says, and 2 additional community members to be so named during the consideration of the appointment bylaw, which will be later on this evening.
Yeah, following our in-camera discussion, right? That's right, okay. Okay, I was a little confused on.
This is essentially accepting the recommendations from each of the groups. Councillor Ribbiak?
Just for clarification, when you went through the names, you indicated 1 name only for Old Timers Hockey, I believe, yet there are 2 in the report.
No.
Mr. Ciano?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was originally 2 names put forward, but the indication is that the name that has been suggested tonight is the name that they're recommending.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Are we ready for the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, and we will have discussion on those other 2 community members. And I do want to say on behalf of council, thank you to these members of the community for coming forward, for not only lending their names, but also lending their service to assist us in the design of this facility. And now, Councillor Beatty has been waiting very patiently.
Okay.
Good evening, Councillor, and thanks again, I should say, to John and Norma, and thank you very much for your presentation, for your work. Thank you.
Appreciate the background, Mr. Mayor, but it's a case where we record for you and members of council and staff. Three things in particular, but certainly available to answer any questions. Under the planning and development, it's been the last 2 terms where we've looked at culture and the importance of culture. Spent a lot of time going through the inventory in terms of what does exist in our community, done economic impact studies and so on. We originally proposed a $500,000 investment plan in terms of supporting culture. That's been reduced to $250,000 in terms of this initial term of council for next term. And it's a case where there was an amendment that I put forward to include up to 2 regional councillors in the adjudication process. Part of that is that I happen to be an adjudicator on the Niagara Prosperity Initiative, and I think myself and others who served in that role have learned a lot and can speak to the table as a champion for that particular program. Culture obviously has quite a large diversity in terms of that, and it's a case where the council did support, the committee and council did support having the 2 regional council members, up to 2, as members of the adjudication panel. Secondly, under public health, it's with some sadness we note that we had a report looking at the allocation of up to $100,000 for costs associated with the closure of the Hope Emergency Hospital Center. That's not the Hope Center, that's the hostel, Old Salvation Army building, I believe. And that we're hoping that this $100,000 in costs can fund for a period of up to 9 months commencing July 1st to ensure the continued availability of emergency hospital facility. This comes back, if you've heard me talk about it before, the fact that we're so underfunded in this area in Niagara compared to areas like Hamilton, Windsor, et cetera, is that we don't have the funds to have these kind of facilities. It's very disruptive for the people involved, clearly. They need to uproot and go to other communities, sometimes where they don't know what the resources are, et cetera. So hopefully while this 9-month funding is there will be some hope along the way to have this reviewed, restored in terms of the needs of those people who don't have appropriate housing. And the last one, your mayor had a number of questions related to this, and obviously it's being on our board is very, very important in terms of the Wainfleet Boil Water Advisory. It's still in place. The Township of Wainfleet has done a number of inspections of their facilities, and we're asking the Township and the Ministry of the Environment to consider appropriate retesting of the groundwater or the aquifer after the repairs to a majority of the septic systems are made. And of course, a little time, lapse of time for the groundwater to recharge itself. Still a significant area of concern for me personally. I know a lot of the lots in Wainfleet are undersized and could, no matter what the technology, they don't have the square footage nor the depth of soil to have adequate facilities. And it's a concern that of mine. What do we do with an urban child who's used to just going to the tap and brushing their teeth and taking a drink of water and so on, but doesn't know the conditions? It's a case where the health risk is certainly there, and it's a matter that we're looking and pressing both the Ministry of the Environment as well as the Township to look after, basically making certain that the repairs to the septic systems do take place, number one, and more importantly, that there's a very strong remediation of the groundwater as a result of it. My report, Mr. Mayor, there's a mention of the, by the way, there was no meeting of the Public Works Committee, so therefore you have a shortened report this time. I did mention about the July 3rd meeting that, of course, is past tense. The only item of significance, very strong significance there, you will have read in the local media, is that this year's award of recognition for Volunteer Citizens of the Year for the person who has been extremely active in terms of the Rankin Cancer Run. But it was a very fitting ceremony because she didn't receive much accolade herself. She simply wanted to bestow all the accolades on her family, on her co-workers, on Mr. Rankin himself, in terms of support for this very wonderful act of generosity. So other than that, the next meeting, not being July the 3rd, will be 21 days after that, 24th of July, before we go into a 1-month break for the summer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beatty. Yes, it was a very wonderful service for Mary Ann Edwards, that presentation for the Roy T. Adams Award. Very, very moving and very fitting, and certainly well received, well deserving. The other thing I would just like to highlight for Council is the first item under Corporate Services regarding water and wastewater rate and requisition methodology. Council may recall that the last 3 years we set a rate at for water, it's at 25 fixed, 75% variable. Regional staff in working together with the public works officials and the treasurers across the municipalities heard that although the municipalities may be interested in looking at that number and seeing whether that's the right number or not, they said now's not the time to change it. So there was a 3-year sort of agreement, and what we approved here was that it be approved for 1 other year, so that staff could then work to get collectively with the all the municipalities to come up with the right methodology or the right approach to see if that number should be changed differently to better reflect water rates. Questions for Councillor Beatty or myself? Councillor King?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Beatty, under Corporate Services Committee, your last point is with regards to a community policing partnership. Can you expand on what that partnership is? Because what I'm wondering is whether that is related to communities or to the NRP's Department of Community Services.
I'm going to refer it to the mayor, in that he chairs that particular committee. I don't serve in that standing committee, so I think it'd be better able to respond to that question.
Thank you. It was an item of correspondence, so I'm going to have to get you a copy of the report.
That would be great.
But it is in keeping with the fact that there aren't those community policing committees anymore. So we'll get that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? The majority of our discussion in that meeting was on the water wastewater methodology, so. Anything else? So there being none, I call the question on receiving Councillor Beatty's report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks again, Councillor Beatty, for your work. Thank you. The next item is minutes, consideration of minutes. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. The minutes of our regular meeting of June 16th. Any errors or omissions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. The next item is consent agenda items. Are there any consent agenda items that members of council would like to lift for separate consideration? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to, under committee minutes for information, I'd like to lift item 11.5.2.2, Library Board Minutes, May 28th, 2014.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. The following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. 1, recommendations, Policy and Priorities Committee are recommendations from the June 16th meeting. Number 2, the minutes of that committee meeting of June 16th. Number 3, staff reports of a routine nature for information or action. The first is the 2013 audited statements, the equity component. And this is that council receive it and approve it. The second is cancellation of a community improvement plan, commercial building facade improvement grant agreement with Fred and Mercedes Siebert, so that we receive it and that we repeal the bylaw in relation to this, and that's because they have sold the property. The third is response to council's request for information regarding the Ontario Building Code changes to allow for 6-story wood buildings, and the recommendation is that we receive it. The fourth major item is action correspondence of a routine nature, and there's one item there, and it's regarding the sanitary sewer backup petition that was held on May 14th, and the recommendation is that the petition be received, submitted by various residents in the town of Pelham, and referred to committee of the whole meeting later this evening for discussion, because there are some items there in the Public Works report on that. There is a letter of correspondence, a thank you letter from E.L. Crosley Secondary School for our continued support for a scholarship. And finally, there's committee minutes for information. There's one set of library board minutes. That's the meeting of April 23rd. There's minutes of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council from April 29th. From the Heritage Pelham Advisory Committee minutes, and that's their May 7th meeting. The Supper Market Committee minutes of June 3rd and of June 11th. And finally, the Supperfest Committee minutes, June 18th. Any discussion on any of those items? Councillor Ribbiak?
Well, just a quick note with regard to 1133. That's the letter or the investigation that was done by staff into higher frame buildings. I take it from what I read there that in Ontario, up to 6 stories is completely acceptable, absolutely safe. I think this discussion came up because we received a letter from, I think it's the cement lobby, essentially asking us to endorse something contrary to that. I don't know what happened to that letter. Maybe that can maybe someone can give us that information, and I think that on the basis of that, we probably aren't going to be responding to that earlier piece of correspondence.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Glover?
Mr. Chair, the letter, we referred to it, we reviewed it, and we come to the conclusion that the Ontario Building Code is and must be correct in terms of the building requirements for Ontario, as throughout the different parts of the world, as well as British Columbia. It has been deemed safe and acceptable, and provides alternative construction methods for costing as well as different types of construction, so it's very beneficial.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. And I take it then that the action we're taking with regard to the letter we received is what? I guess none, no action.
So we've received the letter and we're taking no action, I believe.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any others to that report or any other reports under consent? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Councillor Kersey, you lifted one item.
Yes.
So that is now on the floor, moved by King, seconded by Durley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I specifically lifted these minutes because contained within the minutes as an attachment is a consideration that the library board has given to succession planning of the library board. And it presents some specific recommendations on how to proceed with that. And to some degree, it conflicts with some of the obligations of council in terms of appointing people to a committee, such as the library board, in that it's within the council's purview to consider the applicants and to make those appointments. However, also contained within that succession plan, I think, are some really good recommendations that might even prove to be guidelines for other committees, and how we as a council assess those individuals who have applied to sit on the various committees that we appoint to. So I lifted this, Mr. Mayor, so that we could refer it to staff and ask for an issue sheet to be brought forward at our next meeting to discuss the succession plan that's contained within that, to ensure that there are no conflicts with the procedural bylaw that we operate under, and also whether the recommendations that are contained in there might be applicable to other boards, board appointments that come before us.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have all that? Very good. I heard you typing quickly. Is there a seconder for Councillor Kersey's motion, Councillor Papp? So the motion is to refer this to staff for those three items. Any other comments on that resolution?
To do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried, and we look forward to receiving the information back. And I think what is under the clerk's report in committee is that staff are reviewing those appointments to all those various committees. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. So that item has been referred. We look forward to that coming back. Thank you. The next item, I believe, is my report for council. I have a few items. You have the written report there, but a few items that I'd like to highlight. Certainly, it was a great day when we spoke about it earlier, unveiled the sign for the new Fonthill Health Center. That's and appreciate council colleagues, Councillor Durley, King, Lane, and Papp, helping Dr. Bushi and Dr. Heckenberg unveil the signs signifying the location of the proposed new Fonthill Health Center on Regional Road 20 in the East Fonthill area. If things go according to Hoyle, and best case scenario, the hope is that utilities and road construction can start in the fall of 2014, and perhaps building can start in the spring of 2015. I also want to thank Councillor Ribiak for welcoming, along with myself, Dean Allison and grade 3 class of EWFR School to officially open the newly renovated pool house in Marlene Stewart Street Park. We did receive some federal funding in the order of $85,000 from the federal government, and the town, council will recall, added some money in there for a total of $235,000, so renovations to the pool house. The pool house looks fantastic, and I just keep hearing great comments about it. It looks like a totally renewed structure. I was talking to the pool guards, they're all pleased, the participants are pleased, everybody's pleased. So kudos to staff who organized that. Thank you. And thanks so much to the class. It was an interesting lesson the grade 3 class was learning. It was how to prepare if you would be thrown overboard in the lake or something like that. So very excellent training that we were providing. And of course, they could splash around too a little bit. So it was a great day. The next item, congratulations to Accipiter Radar for celebrating their 20th anniversary. And I want to offer apologies to Councillor Durley. He's not listed here, but Councillor Durley was there. Councillors Ribiak, Papp, and Lane and King were there, along with many others to celebrate their 20th anniversary. Congratulations to them for that. One of the major success stories in our community. Another item is the unleashing of the Pelham Leash-Free Dog Park, which occurred on the 21st of June. Again, an error. I apologize, Councillor Durley. Councillor Durley was there along with Councillor King, Lane, Papp, and Ribiak to officially unleash the dog park, which is located on Center Street, just north of Region Road 20. I've heard, again, great comments about this, and people are using it, and it's being well used, and many people driving by to see that dog park used. An area for big dogs, an area for small dogs, 14 inches or less in height, I think is what the sign says, and also pavilions and area for parking. Thanks very much again to the region for assisting with that and providing the funding, and congratulations to members of our community, Pelham Dogs, that did that fundraising and continue to push for that leash-free dog park. I had the honor of attending the 51st commencement exercises for E.L. Crosley School on June 26th, and it was my pleasure to award the Town of Pelham scholarships to Christopher Bilodeau, who's going into nanotechnology at the University of Waterloo, and to Nicholas Gutierrez, who's going into computer engineering at Seneca College. So congratulations to them and all of the award winners. The valedictorian address was offered by Courtney Steingart, and the Governor General's Academic Medal was awarded to Zoe Abbott-Tate. Just excellent students, so congratulations. They really do make it a very welcoming ceremony there at E.L. Crosley. And finally, I just want to comment and thank those in our community that put together the 25th Annual Canada Day celebrations. Councillors Accursi, King, Lane, Papp, and Durley were participating in that parade, along with so many other people in that parade. It was wonderful, a very hot day, but it was a great time had by all. I want to say thank you to the Rotary Club of Fawn Hill and District for putting together the children's games, the Fawn Hill Lions and Lioness Club for continuing to work in the food booth, including those delicious poutine. Branch 613 Army Cadets for providing security and assistance, and special thanks to Emma Brule, who sang the national anthem in both languages. Niagara Skydive Center for the flyover, and Tim Gretsch, the Thorold Pipe Band for providing the ceremonial pipe in to the flag raising ceremony. Special thanks to all the members of the Canada Day Committee for organizing the entire day, including Fred Arbor, Fred Disher, Bob Gibson, Leo Giovinazzo, Diane Kelly, Bill King, Tim Lalonde, Todd Luby, and Lance Wiebe. Many of those members have served since the beginning or for very, very many years. So thank you very much to each of those members. And deep thanks to the Town of Pelham staff, especially Vicki Van Ravensway, Jessica Riddell, and Julie Cook, and all the planning of the public works staff who ensured that we had a great event. That is my report, members of council. Thank you very much. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Kersey, that Mayor Augustine's report to council for July 7th be received for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Next is Councillor Kersey's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight I'd like to bring a report regarding a couple of items that are near and dear to my heart. The first one is the Pelham Supper Market. You all have my written report, so I won't read through it, but I would like to highlight a couple of things. Number one, I'd like to pay homage to the committee members who've worked really diligently in the face of some considerable pushback to help create a very successful event that truly does complement the band shell and the farmers market. The committee has worked diligently to avoid being in conflict with those vendors at the farmers market, and have carefully selected the food products that they are selling to either complement what's in the farmers market or to avoid it altogether. In fact, Mr. Mayor, I've heard vendors in the supper market, when asked about a specific product, actually refer the clients to the farmers market and to the vendors that are operating there. The beer and wine sales have been quite good, and people have expressed their appreciation to have that present. And I will say that having the tents of the vendors in the supper market very visible to the patrons of the band shell has in fact raised the profile of the farmers market. Because they see the tents, they say, oh, what's going on there? They come down to the supper market, and as they wander through the supper market, there's connectivity to the farmers market. In fact, the crowds at the farmers market have probably been better than they've ever been in recent years. So truly, Mr. Mayor, a win-win situation for all concerned. The committee continues to review the operations of the supper market and their interfacing with the other committees. And I see this as only getting better, and numerous people have commented on what a wonderful addition it has been to Thursday night. So that is my report with respect to the supper market, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Secondly, I'd like to bring a report with respect to Pelham Summerfest 2014, which runs from July 17th to the 20th. And perhaps my colleague, Councillor Papp, could hold up my poster that's hot off the presses. I'd like to begin again by complimenting the generosity of our community and the businesses within our community who support this initiative within our community, and that has become such an important event to our community. Through their support and their sponsorship, there is not a single person in this community that cannot attend Summerfest and enjoy every single activity that is there, because it's all free and it's all family fun. So we would encourage each and everyone in the community to come out July 17th to the 20th to take part in Summerfest. We'd also encourage you to bring your patronage to the various sponsors that are itemized on the poster and within all of our publications. I know they give graciously to the community, and I think it would be helpful if we give back to them. As you all know, we have an active zone, a kids zone, art in the park, and several stages throughout the festival area. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about them. They're all in our publications. They're on social media all over, our website, also on our posters. I would like to highlight, Mr. Mayor, a couple of new things that have been added to Summerfest this year. On Friday night, the Pelham vendors will be open from 4 until 11. This is brand new. And we have created a country and western hoedown. And we have classic country covered by Wendy Lynn Snyder and her Classic Country Review from 6:30 to 8:30. And from 8:30 to 10:30, we have new country covered by a band called Evermile, one of the top new country bands in Niagara. And Mr. Mayor, I'd like you to invite you to come down to our country and western night. Put on your country boots. You come from Fenwick, you got to have cowboy boots and your cowboy hat. And because we've got line dancing from 8 to 8:30, brought to us by Christine Filipowicz and her team of line dancers. So I'm going to look forward to you on the front of that line dance. And Mr. CAO, you're more than welcome, being from out west, to join us.
Thank you, Councillor.
Also, on Sunday, we've added to our community breakfast, we've added a kid zone. We're going to have mini golf and some bouncers so that the kids have some entertainment while mom and dad listen to the blues bands that are on our park stage. And while we enjoy the community breakfast that will be served by all of council that are available and all senior staff. So it was a great event last year, and I think those of us that were serving and those of us that were partaking all enjoyed ourselves greatly. In addition to these new additions, I'd like the community also, Mr. Mayor, to be aware that we've added more shuttles to the various parking areas, and we are running a shuttle throughout the day and evening to Fenwick. We've also added a bike valet for those that are athletic, and a taxi service for those that aren't. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to point out that Pelham Summerfest really began as a celebration of the completion of downtown Font Hill and a celebration of an active lifestyle. But Mayor and Council, I think it's grown beyond that. It's grown actually into a celebration of all those things that make Pelham a great place to live, to raise our families, to shop and to grow. So on behalf of committee and staff, I'd like to extend an invitation to the community and to the broader Niagara community to come out, help us promote and celebrate Pelham with 4 days of free family fun. And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to present you with that. That's okay, Mr. CAO, you can have one too. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to present you with this poster and offer to you a personal invitation to Pelham Summerfest.
Absolutely, thank you.
Look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. It's wonderful, and I just want to comment. So many people have said to me how easy this is, like how well it's laid out. It just makes so much sense. And somebody can look at it and say, yep, I'm going to that, I'm going to that, I'm going to that, I'm going to that. So thank you very much to the work of the committee. If you can pass along our thanks, both to members of the supper market and as well the Pelham Summerfest for the great work in organizing this. So thank you very much. I know Councillor King was putting out a little thing here of when we're all going to work the mini putt. So I think Council's going to do that throughout the day on the Saturday. And as well, I think you said council and senior staff are going to be doing the breakfast on Sunday. And Mr. C, I wonder what the newest staff get to do at that breakfast. I'm looking to Mr. Glover. So,
as the tradition, all new staff gets the garbage removal and.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. It always has to be done. Councillor Papp, you just want a quick comment?
Quick comment. Thank you, Councillor Kersey, for the report. And I just want to publicly acknowledge that throughout all the work that was being done in supper market, I want to acknowledge Director Vicky Van Swansway for her work on the parking, because that has paid off in spades. And all I can tell you, there's been nothing but positive feedback on what has happened with that whole parking plan. So congratulations, Vicky, to you and your staff for overcoming a major obstacle for us. Thank you.
And as well, working in tandem with
yeah.
private parking lots and property owners and volunteers. Well done. Thank you very much, Vicki. Thank you, Councillor Papp, for doing that. Thank you, Councillor Kersey, for your report. And it's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. That Councillor Kersey's report for council on July 7th be received for information. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The next item is has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. The issue sheet regarding the 2014 strategic plan be received and that council approve the 2014 strategic plan. Discussion.
Very well done.
Yeah.
Very focused, very, like I say, succinct, and it gives us an excellent blueprint for not only the short-term but long-term development of this community.
Thank you. Others? Well laid out.
Oh, good.
Certainly appreciate that. And Council, I'm just going to repeat the goals. Really, it was using the creative problem-solving process that we used this. So the ultimate goal is for a vibrant, creative, and caring community, and that's the vision. But the 5 major goals include Goal 1, promoting fairness and equity. Goal 2, maintaining our small town feel as we grow. Goal 3, provide an environment for economic prosperity. Goal 4, engage residents in decision-making. And Goal 5, enhance the quality of life in our town. And those were eureka moments, I think, when we were able to articulate what those goals were and putting in each of those objectives that we have. So thank you to staff for putting this together, and this will form the blueprint moving forward for us. So I'm going to call, unless there's others, I'm going to call the question on the approval of the strategic plan. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. And as we saw earlier this evening, there's already things that we can continue to check off on that strategic plan. The next item has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. The council received the issue sheet regarding the Heritage Pelham Advisory Committee update and provide feedback, and the council direct planning and development staff and the clerk to review the terms of reference contained in the draft Heritage Committee bylaw. Discussion to this, Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make an amendment to this and add a third direction that council directs the clerk and other necessary senior management team members to convene a meeting with the Heritage Committee to review the policies, and this meeting had a lot of recommended suggestions, and certainly some of it needs to be discussed. So just the carrying on with the amendment, the senior management team convene a meeting with the Heritage Committee to review policy, protocol, and terms of reference, as well as the bylaw, and a further report be forwarded to Committee of the Whole for discussion and recommendation. I note that later on in the Committee of the Whole meeting, some protocol administrative issues and a number of committee matters are being considered by senior management already through that report. So the suggested joint meeting would go a long way to ensure that communication goes both ways on that. There seems to be a bit of a breakdown in communication between what the terms of reference are and what the terms of reference are being understood as. So I think that some communication could very well solve some of these matters, and that report would come back to council as per the conclusion here, where there's clarification and direction from council that is necessary. So I would like to make that as an amendment to that, adding a third direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Ribbiak? Any comments to the amendment? There being none, I call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And any comments, questions regarding the main motion as amended? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. Some of the items that were outlined by the advisory committee with respect to appointment and what have you, some of those items, I just wonder how we're going to respond to them, because some of them actually are confidential in-camera items that, such as selection and why certain individuals weren't, et cetera. How are we going to deal with that?
Councillor Durley?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's precisely why I've asked that staff do the direction there, because there are some things that need to be clarified. And I think that will cover some of the questions that you do have and some of the perhaps misunderstandings that are out there. So
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Durley, for that. Any other questions, comments? There being none, I call the question as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended. Thank you. The next item is presentation consideration of bylaws. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass the same, and the Mayor Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 3513 being a bylaw to authorize the Mayor and Clerk to enter into an agreement with KL Ventures Limited, Lou Bradley, for the purposes of a community improvement plan program. 2, bylaw 3514 being a bylaw to repeal bylaw 3488, being a bylaw to authorize the Mayor and Clerk to enter into an agreement with Fred and Mercedes Siebert for the purposes of a community improvement plan program for the property known municipally as 1451 Pelham Street. And bylaw 3515 being a bylaw to authorize the Mayor and Clerk to enter an agreement with the Region of Niagara for a fire investigation tracking application. discussion on any of those items? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We do have some in-camera items, so as is our tradition, it's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King, that council recess the in-camera portion of the meeting and reconvene immediately following the key committee meeting scheduled for this evening. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is recessed. We will take a 2-minute break and then start committee.